It's the Blue Room, and we are getting swept up in this transfer deadline day. Euphoria, is that the right word? I'm not entirely sure it's the right word to describe Everton today, but we are getting...
It's not the right word, Matt.
We are getting swept up in the hype of it all. I think that's probably a better word, the hype of transfer deadline day, because we're live again for the second day in a row. Got Dave Downie here. Dave, how are you doing?
Not good.
Not good?
No.
And we've got Paddy as well, because he couldn't be asked to come and meet me and Dave. So he's on Skype today. Paddy, how are you?
I'm all right. So yeah, I'm good. I'm just sat in a nice comfy chair, you know. No creaking studio or anything else. Yeah, it's not too bad.
Don't lie. You know Jim White's coming on Sky in 35 minutes and you just couldn't bring yourself to miss it, could you?
I'm sat in a suit with a yellow tie as it stands, Matt.
Do you know what? There was somebody who I went to school with who used to, and you just couldn't bring yourself to miss it, could you?
I'm sat in a suit with a yellow tie.
He used to put on a suit for playing Football Manager and finals. He used to wear a suit and take pictures of himself. Honest to God, I've never heard anything like it in my life. I just get a bit of feedback from your headphones there. Sorry if I lost my way a little bit. I could hear myself talking from earlier in the show. But yeah, we're going to get back on to talking about the transfer deadline. I put on Twitter that we looked like we were going to be talking about holidays and the weather at some point, because Everton haven't really been very active today at all. But they have actually signed someone, Paddy, in the form of Vlasic from Hajduk Split. And he's somebody we spoke about in the week. And obviously we got Tina on as well on the subscriber show, who told us a bit more about him. But I just seen your tweet there as well. I think there's a little bit of a danger that the frustration everybody has about today and not being able to get a striker in, not necessarily being able to get a defender in, is being targeted towards this lad a little bit unfairly.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just had a reply then telling me how stupid it is that I was talking about the anger directed at this Everton tweet. And if all you need to do is go on the Vlasic announcement video and you'll see loads of furious replies. And I think there is a danger, as I've put on Twitter, that Everton's project that anger on the signing of Vlasic. I know we're all frustrated at the lack of the striker, or lack of potential striker coming into the club, and that will continue regardless of Vlasic. But we should assess this, I think, on its own merits. And this is an addition of a good young winger that we saw in action twice against us recently, and Everton will have scouted, no doubt, in the run-up to the games against Hajduk Split. I think that there's potentially very little risk to this. In the transfer market, it is now 8 million with add-ons. Is not a huge amount of money, and I look forward to seeing this lad in an Everton shirt, because if he's got the pace and versatility that we saw against Split in the last few weeks, then he'll be a good addition.
Dave, is he somebody that stood out for you at all in those two games? Do you remember any glimpses of him? I've seen a few videos doing the rounds, and it looks as though he's quite stocky, quite powerful on the ball for someone who's got quite a small somatotype, quite tricky. Did anything he do jump out at you in those games at all?
No, not at all. I wouldn't have known him until you mentioned that he was on the brink of signing for us in the last couple of days. But I mean, it's someone, isn't it? But I think, to be honest, the first that I seen of it was David Anderson from the Mirror, who tweeted that we were in for him, and he said he's here to solve Ronald Koeman's striking problems. And then, such as the way Twitter is, people just jumped on him saying he's not a striker at all. So, why are you saying that he is and he's going to solve all of these forward problems? I don't think he fits that type of profile as a out-and-out striker. A lot of people said he's a midfielder, he's an attacking midfielder, and he can play on either wing. It sounds like we've got plenty of them. You know what I mean? So, but he sounds like one for the future. What is he, 19?
Yeah.
So, I still think he'll be around the first team squad. I don't think he'll go into Unsworth's academy setup.
So we're given number 27, which kind of suggests that. It's kind of number you get if you're on the fringes of the squad, isn't it?
I mean, if he does go into the under-23 squad, I'm looking at it thinking we put some money into that this summer, haven't we?
You better win that league again.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite funny, isn't it, that we're sitting here scraping the battle looking for a striker as it stands, and he certainly doesn't fit that bill in the slightest, does he? But I think the point to make out of that as well is, it looks as if we're signing players that are available. I know that sounds really obvious, but people are kicking off, including myself, about us not getting a striker. I think we've acted when we've been able to in the transfer market this summer. Quite clearly, there's something wrong in that we can't get a striker over the line. And if you take just a small sample of the opinions on Twitter, they vary from there's no money
Yeah.
to oh well, go with what we've got. We've had one of the most historic summers we've ever had in our history. So let's everybody stop moaning. And I can see, although not that extreme, I can see both sides of the argument. But it gets to me that had we signed a striker, which looks very, very unlikely now, as we're sitting here at 8:30 with a couple of hours to go, had we signed a striker, that feels as if it'd be something that we could really look forward to going with this season, with that squad, with somebody as a figurehead, as the pivot in the side to be able to provide goals for us, because that looks like the one ingredient that's missing. So I think it's a big shame, really, if we don't get somebody over the line, which I don't expect us to do.
Well, we'll come on to talk about the intricacies of the transfer window and the positions in particular a bit later on. But just as a whole, this window, Paddy, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter today saying if you put this transfer window in reverse and Everton had signed the 4 players that came in initially, Rooney, a bit later in the window, people will be looking at this in a completely different light. Do you think that that's a fair reflection? Is it solely based on timers that people are getting angry? Or are there genuine holes in this squad which Everton don't look like they're going to fill at this point?
I think it's probably a bit of both if you assess it on face value. There's definitely something in the fact that if we'd signed, say, Sigurdsson, Klaassen and Sandro over the last few days, I think people would have gone into the games to come with a lot more positivity. So there is something in that. But by the same token, if you lose somebody in Romelu Lukaku, who assures you basically 20 plus Premier League goals a season and whatever he produces in terms of assists, then I think you need to be very, very careful about how you replace somebody of that ilk. I'm not entirely sure with the players at Everton's disposal at present whether they've got that kind of focal point that Ronald Koeman craves, Ronald Koeman needs in his setup. And we need to now, if we're not going to sign a striker, and obviously there's only, I think, 2.5 hours, 3 hours to go now. If we're not going to sign a striker, we need to start thinking about other ways, apart from Dominic Calvert-Lewin, other ways of attacking opposition sides. It was a point I think Dave made very, very well on last night's show. Why don't you mix things up, go with a 4-4-2 and play Rooney and Sandro together, or Calvert-Lewin with 2 out-and-out wingers and do something a bit different? Because at the moment it seems as though Everton don't have all the tools in place to attack in the way Koeman wants. And obviously the frustration is, as well as that, you've brought in somebody like Gylfi Sigurdsson, who everybody knows is a very good crosser of the ball, great from set pieces and things like that. So it seems as though there's nobody really that's going to be able to profit from the chances that he creates. And that's where the frustration comes into play. And I would be disappointed with this window if we don't sign an out-and-out Lukaku replacement. It would go from maybe being an 8 or 9 out of 10 at the start to maybe a 6 or 5 now, I would say, Matt.
Is there not an argument to say, though, Dave, that every club, if you look at every supporter on Twitter today, from every different club up and down the country, I don't think I've seen many of them who are content and pleased with the work they've done in the transfer window. Every fan that I've seen who are followed from different clubs around the country saying, oh, we need this, we're going to be really struggling about this, and this. You see all the Reds today saying about not getting Virgil van Dijk and about the centre-back options, not happy. Manchester City fans have seen before saying about the centre-backs, the money they spent this summer, and they're saying we've not got enough players as centre-back. And I think if you asked every fan of every club, there's always going to be holes in the squad. It's not just a case of sometimes when you go after a player, you're not going to get everyone. We've seen that today with Van Dijk. We've seen it with Alexis, Thomas Lemar. There's been other examples throughout the window where clubs have just dug their heels in. Are we all overreacting a little bit here? Is the business that's been done pretty solid and enough for Everton to maintain 7th and maybe pushing on a little bit further?
No, I don't think that it's an overreaction. If you've got serious problems with what's happened in the last couple of days, or the lack of what's happened, I think it's perfectly fair. Equally, it's perfectly fair to say we've had a fantastic summer. But I made the point last night about, you need to put it into perspective, really, and there is a balance to this. And every time I think a little bit harder about it today, I'm sort of in a different place with it, because I think, well, you look what we've spent this summer. You look at the transformation in the squad. You look at some of the really exciting, talented players that we've signed. A lot of them quite young, and with bags of potential. That really excites me. But then to arrive at this point right now, and for instance, yesterday we were putting in inquiries for the kid at Cardiff there, smacks of desperation for me. So, I mean, it looks as if lessons haven't been learned for how we've gone about business in the transfer window in the past, judging by what's going on right now, and that's not a lot, and it's inquiries, it's waiting for things to happen. There's still elements of this that we're getting wrong. I think it's quite important to stress. That being said, it looks as if people can point the finger to you all day long and say that, well, you can't moan. Look at the summer we've had. You can't moan. Well, yes, you can, because ultimately, are we any nearer to where we want to be? And the answer to that is no at the moment, because we're missing goals. Now, and Paddy praised me for that there, which is one of the few times he's ever done that. But about the point I made last night, saying that, well, if we're not getting, and it was a big if at this point, but obviously it looks like it's going to be the fact of the matter now. If we haven't got that man in that we need up front, then Koeman simply has to have a look at what he's got. And I'm not saying that in a detrimental way, because we've said that in the past when we had David Moyes as manager. Look, we need to go with what we've got, have a look and make the best of it, which he did, to his credit, a lot of the time. We've got bagfuls of talent all over the place there. I'm pretty sure and confident there's a way that you can find to accommodate all of them and find a winning formula. I just don't think it'll be as prolific as it probably should be. This is all with the backdrop of Lukaku as well, which I guess is a little bit unfair, simply because he's a player, I think, and I've said this for a long time, I think he's irreplaceable in terms of an individual who can score that many goals. The real test and challenge for Koeman is to find like an amalgamation of players that can provide the weight of goals that he did last season. From what we've seen so far, he hasn't done that, and we are playing a system that's very safe, I would say. You know, you look how we've approached the Man City game, which we almost come out with a win. Look how we approached the Chelsea game, tiredness and all that nonsense aside. We didn't go there with a proactive and a creative entity as a team. So I am a bit all over the place with this. My head's gone a little bit with it all.
You can spin it how you want, I suppose.
I can't sit here and say that I'm happy that we haven't got a striker. I'll go as far as saying I think it's criminal that we haven't got a striker at this moment in time, when that was one of the key areas that needed addressing. You saying there about other clubs, and I think other clubs, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. We'll all say, oh, we could have done this better, we could have done that better. The fact of the matter is, Everton, one of the key areas, I said this a few weeks ago, we're not looking, before we signed Sigurdsson, we're not looking at players in positions that are going to come in and cover. We're looking at players who would come in and in the first team straight away. And this was the focal point of that. This was the point in signing Sigurdsson. So I'm extremely disappointed. That being said, I'm not writing the season off by any means, because I think we've got a good enough manager who can work it out. But I hate to use the term, let's get through until January and see what we can get then.
Go with what we've got.
But it just feels like a bit of a waste and a chance missed, and I'm a bit gutted in that regard.
Yeah, I think you can probably put whichever spin you want on it. Some people...
What spin would you put on it?
I'm completely with you. I don't know. I think I said this on the mailbag.
No, but I'm leaning towards, I'm pretty irate that we haven't got a striker in.
Yeah, that's the major disappointment, I'd say. And I think people are overlooking how important getting another centre-back in would be as well. But I think you can put whatever spin you want on it, can't you? You know, if you're somebody who's looking at this unfavourably, you could say, well, we sold our top goal scorer and we've not really replaced them. Or people say, well, we broke our transfer record many times over. We've strengthened the goalkeeper, strengthened the defence. We've got goal scoring midfield players. But I think that the thing that's probably gripping me, and maybe you guys as well, and a lot of people out there listening, is that we don't really know yet, do we? I mean, I've spoken for weeks on the show about not really seeing an attacking plan with this side. And I think it for long spells towards the back end of last season, I think, well, in the early stages of last season, especially coming out of that game against Watford, I was thinking, what on earth is Ronald Koeman trying to do with this team going forward? And I couldn't really see it yet. And I think, you know, while it's his second year, you know, people will be expecting a bit more from this side, and for Everton to be taking shape a little bit more under his tutelage. When you lose a player like Lukaku, you're going to have to restructure the side. You're going to have to restructure the attack, and bringing in all these new faces. And while they cost a lot of money and people are expecting things quickly from them, I think like Davy Clarkson under immediate scrutiny. Sigurdsson, as I say, when he came on at Manchester City, these lads have got to get used to each other as a team. They've got to get used to a completely different culture. They've got to get up to speed in terms of fitness. I don't think Sigurdsson's fully fit yet. Sandro's fully fit yet. maybe even Wayne Rooney is adapting to playing a lot more games. So in that sense, there's just a bit of an underpinning fear of the unknown that you've had this player in Lukaku who's a bit of a safety net for you. He guarantees you goals. You know, he's going to dig you out sometimes. Whereas these lads we've got in now, while they've got, you know, proven past records and they've done well at other clubs, there's a little bit of fear there because we don't really know how they're going to fare you. And I'm sure we'll see articles tomorrow saying which team won the transfer window. Let's grade this team's transfer window. Give it a mark out of 10, 5 stars or whatever. But ultimately, we don't really know yet, do we? And like you said there, Dave, we might find a solution where, you know, Sandro might start leading the line and look fantastic. Calvert-Lewin might start doing it and look fantastic. So for me, it's disappointing as it stands, but you don't want to jump the gun and say for certain that, you know, we can't find another way in games.
That's what. No, sorry, Paddy. I was just going to say that's all well and good, but look at how much emphasis the manager's put on this.
Clearly he wants to title, man. Yeah.
Exactly, and this is what gets me. I mean, he's on holiday in Portugal right now, which is kind of funny, really. Which basically tells you, look, I've left a lot of people in charge to go and do what they have to do with the football club. I'm going to go and enjoy myself, and I'm. He said it countless times, Paddy, hasn't he? He's a coach, and he's left this job up to Steve Walsh and the rest of them to go and get these deals done. I mean, I put on Twitter before, love to be a fly on the wall when he gets back to his office after he's finished his short break.
Yeah, if we look at the setup at Everton at the moment, it would be unfair to give Ronald Koeman too much criticism for what takes place at this moment in time. It's more of a continental system whereby he will liaise with Steve Walsh, who's effectively the lead recruiter, and Walsh and his scouts will go out and identify and negotiate for transfers along with the likes of Robert Elstone and Bill Kenwright. So Koeman maybe being away shouldn't be seen in too harsh a light, I would suggest. But the other point I wanted to raise actually was that we're now seeing the full extent to which Ronald Koeman has had to rebuild this Everton squad. We've gone through 3 windows now, and in each one he's added a substantial amount of players. It started with the likes of Gay and Ashley Williams. Schneiderlin and Luckman came in January, and now we've added 7, 8 or 9 players over the course of this window, and we're still whinging, rightly perhaps, about the parts of the squad that are weaker than they should be. Yeah. I look at this situation, I think if we don't get in a striker, it's obviously massive neglect. But then you look at centre-back and the left-back area. If Leighton Baines gets injured, you've not got another left-back that comes in and covers. Ashley Williams and Phil Jagielka are going to have to play more games because it doesn't look like we've got a centre-back through the door. And that's before you even talk about replacing Gareth Barry. So there are lots of areas in this squad and in this project that are still to be kind of fully improved upon. And we are now seeing just how much Ronald Koeman's having to do. And maybe it requires a bit of patience if we turn the boot on the other foot. Maybe this requires a bit more patience than we're showing at present.
Well, the thing to pick it up on there and what you said is, you know, we should. You didn't say grateful, did you? I'm talking about how many signings we've made. I think it's in double figures, isn't it? This summer?
Overall, yeah.
With Vlasic
senior players, it's about 7, 8.
7 or 8, yeah, senior players. Yeah, completely get that they need time to bed in, but and this is where I think people make the sort of mistake in judging what others are saying about all this, because, you know, I'm incredibly grateful is not the word, but I'm delighted with the business we've done so far this summer. In some of the key areas we've added real quality and all that sort of thing. That's great, but the question that I've been left asking myself is it really enough? And the answer is no, it's not enough, because right now, and this is probably a really unfair comment to make, but I'm still going to say it, I think we're further away from the sides above us than we were last season. Now, obviously we are live on YouTube, so if you want to make a comment, there's a comments box on the side of the player there if you want to get involved in the conversation. I'm just going to read a couple of them out now, just assuming your role here, Matt, for a minute. Daddy B, great name.
Yeah.
No way Ronald is impressed with this or will stay past this contract. How on earth did we not sign a centre forward? It's outrageous. Dale Ando said we'll get a striker in. He's quite confident we'll do some business in the last couple of hours.
Clock's ticking.
Yeah, because Vlas's video was a pure tease. Can you not hear the TikTok in the video? And let's get involved in the transfer deadline day. Well, I'm not too confident about that, to be honest with you. I just think it's the Everton media team doing what they do best. And is it worth pulling? He's put Downie. I'm not playing for Nottingham Forest, but I presume he means Kieran Dow. Nick Toy said,
we're not that desperate yet, are we?
Oh, certainly not, mate. But I might
fancy a roll up front as a target man, Dave.
Well, you've seen me play, Paddy. What do you think?
Got a good touch for a big man. That's the cliche, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the cliche, and I'm probably quicker than a lot of our players at the minute.
Oh, God.
I am joking there. Nick's just corrected himself there. And last one so far, Jamie Shelley says, target man or a striker with pace, which would you prefer? I think that's an excellent question. Actually, referring to the point I made just then, Matt, about Koeman having to go a different way about things. I made the point last night that why are we sort of pigeonholing Gylfi Sigurdsson into this role that can just cross a ball for a big fella? He's perfectly adequate at moving himself and playing slide rule passes through to quick players. And I think there's a real role for Sandro and him to form a partnership in the Everton team.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things we said over the summer is that these new lads should give us different options of going about it. But for the last month or maybe 6 weeks, all we've seen in the press from the reputable sources is that Koeman wants a target man, a number 9, someone who's quite physical. And I was going to come to you on this, Paddy, because it seems as though it's a target that he's wanted for a while. You think back to the last summer and the links with Graziano Pella in January, those links with Belford, they always didn't come off. So it seems as though Koeman's been pretty rigid in what he wants up front. He wants somebody who's going to be back into defenders, hold the ball up, it's going to stick, and he's going to bring others into the game. Do you think that, given the time Everton have had to get this done and isolate targets, and maybe if they get to the 3rd or 4th player on the list and it's not going to happen over the summer, could there have been a change of tact? Has Ronald Koeman been a little bit too unflexible in terms of the way he's gone about this? Could Everton look to attack teams in different ways, maybe with pace, as Dave said there, or if a manager's got a way of doing it and it's worked for him in the past, should he just try and stick to it at all costs?
Yeah, I think they'll need to vary their approach if they don't get in the type of striker that Ronald Koeman wants. I think I mentioned earlier that, as I see it, the only one of Everton's forwards at the moment that plays the same kind of role would be Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And it would be completely unfair to expect that lad to play 2-3 games in a week and score an adequate amount of goals for a side looking to compete for European places. So I think they would need to vary their approach and look to do a bit more within that. And it's interesting to see how he goes. He seems quite rigid with regards to formations. He either goes 3-5-2 or 4-3-3. But as Dave mentioned there, you can attack with width and pace. You can bring in the likes of Ademola Lookman, maybe Vlasic as well in certain games. And that's what I would like to see now. I'd like to see a bit more imagination, because the start of the season, I think it's 7 goals in 7 games now. And that's where we're starting to see the loss and the absence of Lukaku up front. As I mentioned, Lukaku almost guarantees you goals, particularly in the Premier League. And we don't look like scoring a bag full. The one saving grace for me in all of this is that we have made improvements elsewhere. And the fact that we have Pickford and Keane in the middle means that we've strengthened the spine. We've also now got a couple of good defensive midfielders, so we should concede less. But the equation that we need to mull over in our heads as such is whether the other players that have been brought in, I mean, the likes of Klaassen, Sigurdsson, Rooney and Sandro, will score the adequate number of goals to fully replace Lukaku. And I wonder what you lads think about this, really, because I'm still not entirely sure. In my head, I was thinking one more, and you can probably emulate what Lukaku did last season, but without that striker. And I think this is where the concern sets in. It would maybe be a worry at this stage.
Yeah, I think it's a concern, simply because I think it's a lot to ask. It's not a lot to ask in terms of weighted goals for each of them to contribute, a minimum of 8, maximum of 12, something like that. One of them exceeds that, and maybe a couple will get 5 or 6, whatever the makeup is of that. I think it's unfair to ask collectively with a group of players that haven't played together with each other yet. Do you know what I mean? That's the sort of thing you ask. I hate to mention them, but you look at Liverpool and how they go about things. They don't have that talisman number 9 anymore like they used to. They have a collective group of players who all chip in with goals. I mean, you look at Mane's record for them; he's like 1 in 2.
That's an example of finding a solution as well, isn't it? Because nobody thought Firmino would play up front when he arrived for them, but the manager's got players in there. He's looked at a way of going about things, and they're doing things a little bit differently to what you might have expected.
But there's a real sense in that, because when you go away, and this is where the real sticking point is for me this season, is away games mostly. Because I think we'll always find a way at home. I think Koeman has that about him. I think the team has that about them now. That Goodison is a real fortress. I hate that cliche, but I think it is these days. Going away, you want your opposition to not be able to guess where your threat is coming from. And that was always the case with Lukaku. We knew, and I've said it a few times, the opposition, when you're looking at videos throughout the week, who'd you stop to stop Everton scoring goals? Little bit of Ross Barkley, yeah, but Lukaku, you man mark him, you put 2 players on him, get him out the game. And how many times were you sitting there last season saying how isolated Lukaku looked because we didn't have any other threat? And I think that's where we can utilise all of those players that Paddy's mentioned there. I think it's a big ask. I still think it's possible, but I think it'll take time. And I do wonder the time it'll take, particularly with we're still in the midst of a big run of difficult fixtures here. The time it'll take will still be quite considerable, and we'll be playing catch up, I think, for a certain amount of the season. Just want to go back to the questions, Matt, because we've had loads coming here. Thanks everyone who's getting involved. I'll try and get through as many as possible. Daddy Beak still on. He says we should have got Boney.
Not sure about that one.
Paddy, what do you reckon?
No.
David,
and I apologise for what sounds like quite a flippant response.
Yeah.
I think Wilfred Bonny's days are well behind him. At one point, he would have seemed more or less an ideal fit for Ronald Koeman, but he sat on the bench for so long at Manchester City and then didn't pull up any trees at Stoke. I don't think he's the answer, but he actually wouldn't be the worst name we've been linked with in the last few days, I can tell you that.
But it goes back to the point you made on Twitter yesterday, how many compromises do you make, do you know what I mean, before you say, well, maybe let's not, hamper Calvert-Lewin's
depends on the manager. Depends on the manager, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As well, I suppose. It's last year we went out and got Valencia just essentially because he was a body, didn't we? And we needed somebody else there, and it worked a little bit of times. But I think even though we haven't got an out target man, you'd say we've probably got more options of players who could do a job up there. And it's a horrible thing to say when you spent all that money, but it's important to stress. But I think the point you made there, Dave, about the players coming in and striking up relationships with one another is really important, because people, I think, are looking at Sandro, looking at Klaassen, looking at Sigurdsson, maybe even Rooney to a degree as well, and judging the performances now on the the very nascent stages of the season and thinking, we haven't clicked into gear yet. We played in Europe. It's not really worked out at times for us, and they're thinking that that's going to be what it's going to be like for the whole season. But I think someone like Sandro and Klaassen in particular, coming over from a completely different country into a completely different style of football, both of them are still pretty young lads as well. It's going to be a massive, massive change for them. There's going to be different types of pressure on them. They're going to be playing different types of styles. And I think Sandro in particular is a player who I was really excited about us signing, but I always anticipated that it'll take him a little bit of time to gel. And when we spoke to Rob Palmer, Paddy, he actually said, didn't he, that the Sandro is somebody who is at his best when he's right up top, leading the line, making those long busting runs in behind. So maybe people are looking at him now and, he's been injured. He's not really started many games as of yet. He's not really impressed where he has been on the pitch, and kind of just putting that to one side and forgetting that some of the business we've done. We have got a couple of players that could go into that position and do a pretty decent job when they're up and running.
Yeah, I think that's entirely right. And we certainly shouldn't write off Sandro and Davy Klaassen before a ball has really been kicked in anger. We're obviously only 3 games into the Premier League season as it stands. So let's not do that at this moment in time. But what I would say is that somebody like Sandro, and given what we've seen of him so far, I do think he's a talented player. Yeah. But he's certainly not going to be the one in these games against the likes of Tottenham and Manchester United away from home. He's not going to be the one to play as your lone striker and to shoulder all of the physical burden that comes with playing in that role. So maybe for now, despite what you've said and despite what Rob Palmer said, maybe for now it would be better to play him just off to either to the left or to the right of, say, Dominic Calvert-Lewin if another centre forward doesn't come in, and see if he can strike up a relationship with Sigurdsson and Rooney, who are playing deeper, and hopefully sliding them in for 3 passes. Because let's not forget it was only pre-season, but we did see some good things from Sandro in those spells. I thought the run and cross against, was it Genk or Ghent?
I think it was Genk, wasn't it?
Was it Genk? I was
the one he pulls back for Rooney.
The run and cross to set up Rooney against Genk, that was fantastic. And it showed a bit about what he's about when he gets into his rhythm. And there was a lovely out to in run against Sevilla where he took Tom Davis's through ball and rounded the keeper and scored. So I think we need to be patient with him and maybe phase him in gradually. But to make him play that lone striker role that Koeman likes, shoulder the physical burden would be a step too far at this stage for him.
Yeah. I'll rattle through these as quick as I can because there's loads of them. So we won't be able to go in depth on all of them. But David Gibb, we've been talking about a striker for 3 years. Even when we had Rom, we never had a proper backup. No point having all these midfield if there's nobody to finish it off or hold it up. Completely agree with that. Dale is back on. He said Benfica just signed Douglas from Barca, so maybe there's life in the Jimenez deal yet. Dale's really clinging on to us getting a striker, mate. I really hope you're not sitting there weeping.
I think he's in the Mexico squad. So I can't imagine that'll be done now. So
and Andy Prendergast, we know it's our case pragmatism, but if there is no striker to come in, he has to show his mettle with the ingredients he has. I think that's been a key theme of what we've been talking about so far. He has to get midfield more attack minded. Failed to do it last season. Charlie Adam just said on 5 Live that Giroud's missus scuppered the move to Everton, didn't fancy Merseyside. She's ruined our season.
Why would Charlie Adam know about Olivier Giroud's missus?
He always comments on Everton, doesn't he, Charlie Adam? Anyway, he thinks he loves having a bit of a pop with us. But
said the fine line asking that question, Paddy, I think, by the way.
Why does he know?
Oh, well, I'll leave it to everyone listening to speculate about that.
Giroud doesn't hang around with riff-off like him, does he, anyway? So, but no, just before we move on to talk about the lads that are going to be in a bit more detail, what do you think could have been different in this window, Dave? Because I'll put it down I wrote down here, I think there's probably 3 phases of the window. The first one, which was all the early signings, maybe going towards Rooney when we were all very excited. Phase 2 is just Gylfi Sigurdsson. Taking that deal, dragged on for a long, long time. And I think since that one, we've kind of floundered a little bit, trying to get a target man in, trying to get a left-side defender in. Is there anything Everton could have done a little bit better in this sense, in terms of getting the target man in and finding a striker that people are commenting here that's really going to improve us? Well,
the short answer to that is yeah, because the way we've gone about our business, we've seemed to, like I said before, sign players that have been available to us. So we went and signed Sunderland's best player, the goalkeeper. Went and signed Burnley's, the defender, Michael Keane. Sigurdsson, Swansea's best player by a country mile, which is great in theory, but it's not addressing the gaps in priority. Getting Pickford in was the most important signing for me. I'll always maintain that. And I put a point on Twitter before to Phil McNulty of the BBC that I'd actually be fuming a lot more now if we were sitting here with the target man and we didn't have an adequate goalkeeper. I really would. So the priority in which we've addressed the players we've got in, but of course that's offset by the fact of you can only sign what's really available to you. I know everybody has the price, and I know there's definitely going to be questions about Mashiri and Steve Walsh. There already have been today about the money we've got available. A lot of people been asking me on Twitter, do you think this Mashiri's a red herring almost, and it's almost like a false dawn, and he hasn't really got the money and things like that? I'm certainly willing to give him a lot more time than this, and I think that's a point that Matt Aston's made here on YouTube as well. He said that as Koeman said he needed 4 windows for the project, in inverted commas. He'll walk the shouts are absolutely short-sighted. UTFT, completely agree with him there. I think there's no chance of Ronald Koeman walking.
Not when he's on a £6 million a year contract. Anyway.
That and I think I didn't necessarily ever think he was here for the long term, but he's certainly here to see out his contract. I think unless something goes seriously or drastically wrong. David Gallagher agrees with us. Koeman will be forced into change his preferred style of play. So there's the point of not getting in that much needed striker. Just hope Calvert-Lewin steps up. Big ask for the young lad. That's from Everton lad. Dale said very Alex Ferguson-esque, by the way, the lad signing a player who played well against us. He did that a lot at United. Stephen Hardy, do you think there's a place for Sambu from the under-23s? Paddy, you probably, and well, Matt as well, but Paddy, obviously, with you doing the academy watch with us, you're probably best positioned to answer that one.
Yeah, I don't think at the moment there's anybody in the under-23s that looks ready at this moment in time to step up right into the seniors. Bas Sambu is clearly a very talented lad, and if you give him maybe another season or two, together with a loan move to the Championship or League One, he may eventually get there, but there's nobody at present, to my mind, at least, that could step in. And just to go back to the original question that Matt asked, I actually think that Everton should have approached the Lukaku sale a bit differently. And I know it was about getting him off the books and getting as much money as possible at the start of the window so that we could spend it. But I actually think what really intelligent, tactical sides do is get the replacement in first.
Yeah.
Go out and buy the player. Say that man is Olivier Giroud. You go and buy Giroud or a player of that caliber and that ilk before you sell Lukaku, and then you're in a position of strength as opposed to weakness. Because any side now, say you're Crystal Palace and you're looking at Everton in the last few days of the window, they know that Everton have got a substantial amount of money from the Lukaku sale. 95 million, we're led to believe. So the price for Benteke becomes an extra 10-15 million on top. So that's the one thing if I could change one thing from this window, it'd be the way they went about selling Lukaku and replacing him.
I think the other thing as well is if you held on to Lukaku for a couple of months, say a couple of weeks ago, that price for 90 million for him looks a bit of a bargain, doesn't it, from Man United's point of view? But I mean, we've talked a lot about the top end of the pitch, Dave, and the problems Everton might have going forward. I think towards the back end, Pickford, good signing, Keane, good signing. Martin has shown a bit of promise, a bit of something else, which I'm not really going to touch upon.
You're going to get pelted
but I think the defence concerns me just as much as the other end, to be honest, because as Paddy mentioned there, you've got Leighton Baines, who turns 33 later this year. And I think we've all seen he's still a fantastic player, great technician, does a really good job at left back, but he is very much in the twilight of his career now, I'd say. Doesn't get forward as much, doesn't give you that kind of attack and thrust that he used to bring to the left-hand side. And there's no other natural left-back in the entire squad. We've sent Anthony Robertson out on loan to Bolton. He seems to be doing a pretty good job there. I don't know if there's any kind of option to recall him. Luke Garbutt's still knocking around. I'm not entirely sure what he's doing. Maybe just putting the cones out at this point in training.
But off at this stage.
And the other issue as well is centre-back. And I think Koeman wanted somebody to come in who could maybe do both jobs. Maybe like a bit of a, Tesco's value, Daily Blind type player. But that's not materialised as well. And suddenly you're looking at the centre-back options and you're thinking, Phil Jagielka and Ashley Williams and Leighton Baines, all lads there who've probably got a combined age of getting on towards 70, are going to be playing, so even more than that, getting on towards 100. I apologise. Yeah, I was thinking of the two of them there. But
it's just shy of 100.
Yeah. So you put on a lot of responsibility there on a lot of lads who have played a lot of football in their career and might not be able to shoulder that going towards the end of the season.
Well, no, but I don't think it's as much of an issue if you're playing players in the right position. Now, Koeman's very fond of playing this wing-back system, and Mason Holgate's being the sacrificial lamb in that regard, as far as I'm concerned, because we were down at Swansea and he was there and he hasn't got an attacking bone in his body. So quite clearly the role is not for him, nor is he a natural right back. He can fill in position and he can do a job there. He's a centre-half. He needs to be nurtured into being a centre-half as well.
We've never seen him playing a back two in the Premier League.
No, exactly. And that shows a lack of trust, I think, from Koeman. And it's probably less likely now, given that Michael Keane's the sure starter out of everybody at centre-half. I don't think he'd have faith in putting Holgate next to him. That's two really young centre-halves. It's the point about somebody made it about Ben Gibson, who's a real favourite of mine. I'd have loved us to get him in. That being said, I think you always want a centre-half over the age of 30 in your side, just for experience in Nous alone. Jagielka has still got it, I think. Not too sure weight of games won't play a factor in his involvement. Ashley Williams, I think, has been quite poor, really, since we got him. And I've been really disappointed by his effect on the side, given what he showed at Swansea and for Wales as well in the summer as well. Just to go back to a couple of questions. Who's Dale? I tell you what, Dale, I'd love a bit of what you're on, mate, for these positivity you're showing. Werner, Jimenez, Dzeko, Belotti. Tell you what, mate, we end up.
Is that just a list of good strikers, or is it people that we should be going after?
I don't know if he's speculating that these could possibly happen, but tell you what, mate.
Is it about geography? Is it a question about geography? Jimenez is in Mexico. Belotti will be in Torino and will stay with Torino. And who is the other one?
Dzeko and
Jimenez.
Dzeko will be with Bosnia on international duty.
Why does Dzeko leave Roma, who are in the Champions League? And look, Rome's a beautiful city. Why does he leave Roma in the current climate to come to Everton.
You had to get the hipster stuff in there. But no, you're absolutely right. And I think it also fits into a point that I made earlier. Sound very self-righteous here by saying all these things, but I've written that much today about it. There's probably no stone unturned here. But yeah, I mean, the point about Champions League players and Everton need to go and sign them, that's where it really is not that simple. I mean, Giroud, case in point there. I know Arsenal aren't in the Champions League, but if he's to leave Arsenal, he goes to a Champions League club, in my opinion, because he's over the age of 30. Understand all the nonsense. I understand the point about it being a World Cup year and things like that. But if he's leaving Arsenal, it's probably for a step up in regards to playing in the Champions League. Dzeko, similarly, like Paddy's just said there. I think a lot of players that are the desired options for us play in sides that would regard Everton as being a step down to them. So that's where I think it's equally as difficult to get them over the line. Therefore, people are then saying, why aren't you throwing the war chest at it? You need to pay big for these lads. That's where I can probably get on board with that argument, is that you've got to go and pay double. But there's a point I really want to get to, and I've promised them for ages I would. Mick Coyle, who I work with, has said, do you think Blues feel disappointed at this point? Because the quality of early signings has been such that expectations were raised above what they would have been at the end of last season.
No, I think you can look at it in the cold light of day and just look at the squad and say, we're short there. And, you know, I'd probably say that there are 4 positions where I'd have to say that the squad is pretty clearly short. I think we need somebody with pace in the final third. Whether Vlasic can bring that, I'm not entirely sure. I've not seen enough of him. We obviously need another centre forward, and we need a left back and another centre back as well. And I think they're the gaping holes in the squad which you'd look at and say, if Everton, you know, if you're doing a Football Manager or FIFA career, they're the areas you're going to address if you're the Everton manager on it. So I think from a fan's point of view, a lot of people can see that. And like I said, the early knock-ins of the season have kind of rammed that home for a lot of people, because sometimes if you look at the squad and you've got a few fears, and then you go to the match and you see Everton put in a good performance, or, you know, they beat Stoke 3 or 4-0 on the opening day, they hammer Hajduk Split 4 or 5-0 in the Europa League. You go away thinking, oh, maybe that's not the case. Maybe there's a way that we can do this here. But I think the early performances, even though we've lost once, have kind of planted that fear in the minds of a lot of people, and it's been allowed to flourish by Everton being pretty stodgy going forward, not looking particularly comfortable with a few aging lads in the back of Chelsea. So that fear that a lot of us have got has kind of been allowed to fester. I think it's just a case of looking at the squad and seeing it's pretty clear what we need. I don't know what you think, Paddy.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And the way I would phrase it is in a simple question. Are Everton now in a stronger place than where they were last season? Now, Dave has already said that he doubts that because they've not adequately replaced Lukaku. And I tend to agree that if we've not gone backwards, we certainly haven't progressed to the point at which we're able to challenge for top 4 or top 6, or maybe even a cup in this case. So that's the simple question that I would ask. And I remain unsure, without that centre forward and maybe without another top quality centre back to play on the left, I doubt whether we're able to compete at the top end this season.
Yeah, that's where I'm at, Paddy, with it, because, and this is where people will kick off about what I'm saying. Certainly the more positive of the listeners that we've got will say, well, how can you say that when we've signed all of these players, spent 146 million in the transfer market, and we're further away than we were last season when we were still playing Aruna Kone? The point to make there is that's the importance of goals. And as quickly as people wanted Romelu Lukaku off the books when he was spouting all of the nonsense he did, you know, it's the cold light of day is he's still incredibly difficult to replace. Goals are the currency of football, and we still haven't seen that come to fruition yet. I have faith that it will. To what extent, we don't know. So for that reason, that's why I'm saying last season, I think we were better equipped. But these are issues for the manager. I mean, we're paying him $6 million a year, like you mentioned there, Matt. If you can't get the best out of a group of attacking players that what we've got, you know, then that's on his shoulders. That I can understand us not getting the striker in from the point of view that it's pivotal to what he wants to do. But he's proved to be a pragmatic manager in the past. You look at the way he set up and got victories away at likes of Old Trafford in the past with Southampton. Very nearly did it with us last season. City similarly, Anfield as well, where he's won. He knows how to tackle these things in these issues. So I think we're at a stage now where you've got to put your faith in him to be able to do what he can with the players we have at our disposal. And again, I'm not saying that's a a real negative. It's a positive because we've got a lot of really good players for him to choose from, but there's pressure on him to pick the right formation and the right players, because we've never been in this position before where we've got talent on the bench and you're able to sit there and say, well, why hasn't he played him? That's where you can instantly criticise the manager, because if you don't win a game and you've still got Tom Davies sitting on the bench and he hasn't got on, or Morales or Lookman, you sat there saying, well, you should have done that. And that's where the beauty of hindsight comes in, and it's really a hard thing for the manager to cope with.
Yeah, I think that's where the anxiety comes from. And you mentioned Koeman and his pragmatism there and going away to these big grounds and doing a good job. And a lot of the examples you mentioned, United, Chelsea, Liverpool, they were his former club. We haven't really seen that with him yet. We've won one away game in 2017 in the Premier League, which is not really good enough, is it? Not good enough at all. And
he's not 4 in 21.
Yeah, even that was in January as well, the last
really
one. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, we can sit and you can put teams together in your head. You can write down what the best 11 is going to be, and you can say, well, that's got a bit of lack of pace. We're not quite right there. We're not quite right there. But if Everton go and start looking pretty good on the pitch again and start winning games and going, say if they went to Old Trafford after the international break and put in a good performance and won, people would start feeling a lot differently about it. So I think that the Chelsea game and losing that game has left everybody feeling a little bit downbeat about it all. And maybe if that was a draw or Everton had gone there, suddenly you'd be looking at the squad in a completely different light. And it's ridiculous to say on the back of one performance, isn't it? But
well, that's the thing. I mean, you look conversely on the other side of the park. They've beat Chelsea 4-0, signed a player that contributed to the winning the game 4-0, and now they're saying they're going to win the league. So yeah, that's how it works in the other extreme, isn't it?
We'll get a couple more questions, Dave. Then we're going to have to talk about Ross Barkley before we finish up.
Yeah, this might, well, definitely is one for you two, because I've never heard of this lad, but Stephen Hardy's asked, do you know anything about Dennis Adeniran? I'm spelling that Adeniran.
Yeah, this is the lad that Dominic King's just tweeted about. I think a Fulham midfielder who plays for England's youth team as well. I think he's an England under-18 international, a central midfielder, and really highly rated by the Fulham setup. But I can't profess to have seen him live in the game, so I'm certainly not going to give too much of an opinion either way. It looks like he's had a medical, and he's agreed personal terms. It looks like you're going to Unsworth's under 23. So another example of further strengthening there.
That team's going to be amazing, isn't it? The under 23s. It should be wrong. You're going to have so much to talk about, Paddy, on that Academy Watch show this year.
Shameless plug there. But you know what? Fair play to you for knowing about that, mate, because I've not ever heard of that man. So, you know.
I thought it was like someone had sent in a joke name at first, and when you read it out quickly, it was going to be like Yadar Sells Avon or something like that.
That's no effort at saying his name, by the way. I do apologise if he ever comes across as me saying that. David Masson as well made an excellent point here. Completely agree, 1,000,000%. He says, in regards to playing what suits the players you have, Gray from Leicester, 25 million, Bournemouth turned down. Pace needed, if not a target man. Neither is a disaster. Probably on board with all of that.
But we don't have either a pace or a target man.
Exactly,
that's the thing. Yeah, that's the worrying thing. I think that again, I don't want to go too far because we haven't seen this in action yet. I'm not entirely sure what the plan's going to be going forward. But there's a lot of players there. I've made this point on the show a couple of times this week who I think want to be the last player in the move who finish the chance off, get into the space on the edge of the box and shoot, or make a clever run in the box and somebody threads that pass through to them and they're onto it. I don't see any necessarily an abundance of players who are going to do the pass to them or the fair pass to them. Stephen Pienaar used to be brilliant at that, didn't he? Drawing a couple of men, knocking it off to somebody else, and they were in space there and the pitch opened up for them. And we're going to come on to talk about him now, Paddy. Do you think Ross Barkley can maybe be that man? Because it looks as though, obviously we've got an hour and 45 minutes to go, but Barkley's obviously got a bit of a long-term injury. Apparently he's turned down and moved to Chelsea, according to David Ornstein, who's very reliable from the BBC when it comes to all things London football. What do Everton do with this now? Because they turned down a £25 million bid, and some people, I think yourself, Dave, actually was quite critical of that on Twitter, because he's not going to play for Everton up until January very much. And all of a sudden, there's the prospect there where you're looking at the January markets and Everton could be getting a really reduced fee for him. They won't be able to lose him on a free in January because the whole thing of the tribunal and stuff like that. But it's a really, really awkward situation, I think, for Everton and Ross going forward if he does stay.
Yeah, and I get the emotional argument that I've seen some people put forward, which would be about leaving him to rot in the reserves after he's said that he doesn't want to play for the club anymore. But what I personally would do, I would be pragmatic about this, and I would look at it and think he was our main chance creator last season. I think he actually created more chances than Thomas Lamar and a few of the others in Ligue 1 and the really hot properties over there and in some of the other major leagues. So I would be pragmatic, and if he stays at Everton beyond the January window when he's back in action, at least until the end of the season, I would use him as a rotation option, because I think we do actually miss, although Sigurdsson and Rooney are great creators and commit players in other ways, I think we miss somebody that gets us from A to B really quickly and takes on defenders and makes them feel a bit worried. The difference between, say, Lukaku and Barkley and Rooney and Calvert-Lewin is quite marked for me, and I think he should have a role to play if he stays beyond January.
No, I disagree. I think, I really wish he'd go, to be honest with you, and it does pain me to say, because
so do I. But I just think if he stays at Everton, we can't let him rot in the reserves. He's got to play games and prove his worth to a certain extent.
Well, yeah, but that's on him, isn't it? He's got to go and prove himself and get himself back in favour with the manager, and I don't think that's possible. I think we've got a manager who's a straight shooter and will not sort of tolerate. He's got like a zero tolerance policy.
In that mindset, if he's a straight shooter, if Barkley gets his head down in training and starts doing well, I mean, like Paddy said there, I think we forget from January to April last season, he was fantastic. Ross Barkley, he was Everton's best player, going to grounds like Tottenham and really putting great performances in week after week, and we were all delighted with him. And granted, he tailed off a little bit towards the end of the season when all these rumours started flying around. But I agree with Paddy. You're in a situation now where he could go for nothing next summer, and if he's not going to sign a contract, he's going to go for nothing next summer. Use him. Why not use him? Is he that much drastically worse than the players we've got? Are Everton not going to benefit if he comes in and plays games?
No, he's better, and that's the thing as well. There's already times this season where I've looked and I've thought, we could probably do with him there. Do you know what I mean? He'd be a decent option to have in certain areas on the pitch, in certain moments in games. I've thought, yeah, dare I say we need Ross Barkley. What I can't seem to get my head around is the fact that he doesn't want to be there, and I find that hard to take as an Evertonian, and this is where I probably should detach myself emotionally from the situation. But he's been offered what is allegedly or reportedly a really good wage at Everton and being rewarded for that form that you've mentioned there, Matt. Reading between the lines, certainly my own interpretation and what I've heard about his relationship with Koeman is that he was disappointed that Koeman had often hung him out to dry, and which is definitely a far cry from what he was mollycoddled by Roberto Martinez at times, and probably overplayed at times when he should have been taken out of the side. Koeman's the direct opposite of that, and he's had no bullshit from him, and that's, I think he struggled to come to terms with that. I think he probably feels hard done by the fact that all season long certainly seemed to be a common narrative with us that we were searching for a number 10, and he saw that his position was up for grabs. And I don't think you can put too much blame on him maybe not fancying having competition for his place, but I think he probably saw that as a little bit of, well, what am I doing here? I'm working my arse off to get in this side. I'm providing a consistent level of form, yet the manager still thinks he needs to find somebody who can play in my position as well. I think there's trust issues on both sides, and there's only going to be one winner, and it's going to be Ronald Koeman. It's dreadfully sad, the situation we're in with him. But the longer it lingers, he just needs to go, and he needs to go now. If he stays, it just feels like it's festering. It's an issue that there's always going to be a cloud hanging over him, even if he plays. And lest we forget, look at the abuse he got. And what he gets when he plays and he misplaces a pass. I mean, it's ridiculous. Some of the.
I think that turned a little bit last season.
It did turn, but yeah, that's because he played well and he wasn't doing a lot wrong.
And everyone, the fan base rallied behind him with that thing with the sun and stuff like that. Really rallied behind him in that instance.
Yeah, I completely agree. But that was when they didn't know that he didn't want to be at the football club. Now they do. So do you really think it's
I think
not going to be perpetuated a million times over?
Obviously, I don't know what it's like with him and Koeman behind the scenes, because we haven't got this kind of inside information. Koeman said that he doesn't want to sign a contract.
No, but Barkley's also said that he dislikes the wrong word. he didn't appreciate Koeman sort of coming out.
Has he actually said that anywhere?
I think that he did that in an interview, didn't he? Was it with one of the big journals?
Paddy, have you seen that anywhere?
I haven't, but I'll bow down to Dave if he says that's what he said.
I'm telling you right now, he said it to one of the national journals.
No, I don't think. I think you're going into ITK Downie mode there.
But there's no such thing.
But Paddy, do you think there's no way back for Ross? Is there not a situation where if Everton are doing well, he gets back into the team in November, he's starting playing well again? Is there not a scenario where both parties can say, listen, this is obviously working out for you, it's working out for us, let's get our heads together and get a new contract signed?
Well, there absolutely should be. You'd hope that Ronald Koeman, as a pragmatist, would look at somebody like Ross Barkley, and if Everton are in a situation in which they need more creativity or more goals, and they've got Ross Barkley sat waiting in the wings, I would hope they would use it. So for me, there should be a route back. Whether or not Ronald Koeman is proud enough to allow Ross back into the setup is another thing entirely, isn't it?
Dave's searching for this fancy article he just made up. What are the people saying on our comments, Dave, about this? Have we had any questions about Ross or any comments on it?
No, a lot of people still strongly talking about strikers, unsurprisingly. Do let us know your thoughts. We are live, which we probably haven't mentioned enough here.
Yeah.
But then again, if you are listening, you do know that we're live. So, comments on Ross Barkley, please. What would you do with him if he does stay, which is pretty certain now? How long have we got left? An hour and 40 minutes till the window closes. It is such a shame. And you look back on his career at Everton with regret. But I think he's been poorly advised. I think he's not of straight thinking. And I wrote something at the time about it, that I think Ross Barkley, it could have been so wonderfully simple for him to be an Everton player, because he's a lad from Liverpool, from Wavertree, who should be enjoying his football at the club he supports. How much simpler can it get than that? And
who's to blame for that, Dave?
What, the fact that he's not able to do that?
Yeah,
I think there's onus on the supporters to a certain extent, because, like I mentioned before, people have given him dog's abuse. I sit by a lot of them who just won't have him. Any slight thing he does wrong, if he has a shot from outside the box, if it goes over, they'll probably give him both barrels, which is completely unfair for a player that's certainly one of our own, in inverted commas. But also, I think the onus is on himself as well, because there's a line of progression I think a player with that talent has to take. And what is he, 24 now?
23.
He's 23. We've reached the stage now where you think, well, you're far beyond the years of which we're sitting here saying that this is a player with a lot of potential. He's at the point now where he has to deliver. He hasn't delivered. Again, there might be mitigating circumstances for that, given that we've had a striker who was the priority in the side. Would he have performed better had we not had Lukaku? And he was able to express himself a lot more, and the team was built around him. We have the comment in here as well. LH77. Ross does not want to stay, has refused the new contract and told Ronald Koeman he wants to go. If no deal is struck tonight, then he should train and play with the under-23s and stay away from the first team.
Is that by Dave Downie?
He just wrote it out on a bit of paper in front of him.
Listen, if he can prove himself, but I do think it's a hell of a long road back. But yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I think that could be quite toxic having him around, because he doesn't want to be there. I have a big issue with players who don't want to play for football clubs.
It's that thing as well, though, isn't it? It's a World Cup year, and he'll be thinking he can get into it. He's not going to sulk and kick up a stink around Finch Farm. He's going to be wanting to get involved, wanting to play, and want to show he can go to that World Cup. But
there's no way Ross Barkley goes to the World Cup. No way in hell.
Have you seen the most recent England squad? Really?
I'm saying really, because the manager's an idiot for a starter. Gareth Southgate, and wouldn't dream of picking him. Even when he was on form, he didn't pick him. So there's no chance of that happening. The best thing for all parties, sad as it is to say, is for him to cut ties as soon as possible.
Or sign a new contract.
Problem the club, yeah, well, that's not going to happen either. The problem the club have is, you're in between a rock and a hard place, aren't you? Because many of the reports today are saying that Everton are holding out for something in excess of £30 million for him. They're not going to get that for a player within 1 year of his contract. Oxlade-Chamberlain withstanding, by the way. But also, how long do you let it go before you say, well, there's an acceptable price because he hasn't got that long left. If it goes to January, Everton are going to get 30 million for him. If Chelsea have offered 25 today, or Spurs, whoever, have offered 25 today, I think that's mightily tempting for Everton to take. Do you think, Paddy, would you sell him for that money?
What fee are you talking about here, Dave? About 25 million?
Around 25 to 30.
I don't think he's worth less than Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I think he's a better footballer with more potential than Chamberlain. So for me, I know there's an injury there and there's also the situation over the contract, but I think we should be holding out for 30, 35 million at least. And I do tend to agree with you. This is where we actually do agree, Dave, funnily enough. I do tend to agree with you insofar as I would like a resolution to this. But that resolution for me doesn't just have to be accepting any bid that Tottenham or Arsenal or Chelsea throw at us for him over the next few days, or the next few hours, I should say, because we all knew that this was going to happen. We all knew that he ideally wanted to go to Tottenham, and that Tottenham were going to come in right at the end of the window and lowball Everton for Ross Barkley with something approaching a derisory offer. And I don't think it sets the right kind of tone to give in, to always cave into those demands. And Ross Barkley, yeah, maybe if he sets foot back on a pitch for Everton, a few fans would grumble, more than a few perhaps. But if he scores the winning goal in that game, or he provides the pass that sets up the winning goal, fans will quickly realise that he's got something still to give. And that's how you've got to look at it. You've got to look at it. What is he capable of doing on a pitch for Everton? And is he a net positive in the things that he does? And he might be a boost December or January time to our hopes of winning a cup competition or getting into the top six. And that's how you've got to look at it, I think.
Yeah, football fans have such short memories. Remember Carlos Tevez when he used to play for City and all their fans were kicking off about he was back in the team again in a few months' time, helping them win the Premier League title. Suarez, when he said he wanted to leave, people were burning his shirts out, in the back gardens, weren't they, Liverpool fans? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a similar sort of situation. If a lad's on the pitch scoring goals and making goals for you, people forget about past discrepancies very, very quickly indeed. But I was just going to make a point on Barkley. I think, obviously, if it goes to January, Premier League clubs can't agree a pre-contract with him to make him sign for free. But I've been thinking about this for the past couple of weeks. I think someone like him would really benefit from going abroad and playing somewhere like Spain. I think it'll suit him down to the ground, the style of football there. Quite a technical player as well. And maybe that's something that might open up for him in January, where teams can start negotiating with him in January from abroad. Well,
it'd be an amicable solution, certainly from our point of view, because you certainly wouldn't want him going anywhere else in the Premier League and hurting us, which has definitely happened as well, because it's Everton. Yeah, I completely agree with that. We've had a few more comments.
Yeah, should we finish off on some comments?
Daddy Beak has been back. I love that name, by the way, honestly.
How'd you spell that?
Might call me firstborn child, Daddy Beak.
Daddy Beak's in like a bird's beak?
Daddy Beak, all one word. And
what other type of beak, Matthew?
It is beyond that hour, isn't it? I think Matt
people listen to this in the morning and be going, oh my word.
Matt needs his fix.
Hey, it's all going on here at the Blue Room. It's all going on.
Bit gutter, we're doing YouTube Live and Facebook Live, by the way. But he said Ross's pre-goal celebration versus Hull seems an age ago now. Such a shame, but he chose not to sign that deal, and now we'll only get buttons in January. Yeah, I think that's the dilemma. David Gibb, I think he's highlighting Gareth Southgate's incompetence here, like I've just mentioned myself. He confirms Joe Hart will start for England in Malta. And I think he's quoted Southgate saying, I believe he is our best goalkeeper at the moment. I'm not sure about that. Okay. I think we've got one that's miles better than him anyway. And so
he's not there though, is he?
So have Stoke as well, who'd probably be the next one. And we've had David Gallagher. I would love to see Barkley play with the quality he has around him. That's true. Now. That's a great point. He was crying out for options last season. Conversely, David Masson said again, he was great second half of the season when I thought where I sit in the lower Bullens, he gets too much stick. I might get stick for saying this, but he should be up front. He doesn't have time to think, which is an interesting thing, because did he not say, and this might be me misquoting people again, but did he not say that he's a striker?
He did. He did
at some point, under Martinez?
Yeah, but I don't think
he used the word forward.
Yeah, I think you might be right there, actually, Paddy. Yeah.
Which is different. A striker to me means a centre forward, whereas forward could be a Kevin Morales or an Ademola Lookman as well.
I do like what David's ended with there. Says all those nice things about him. Should be a striker. Last sentence has to go now. That's it.
It's always sums up Everton's window, that, doesn't it? Positive, 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 and then negative to finish on. But I mean, just before we do finish, lads, on the whole, transfer deadline day's been a bit mad. I think a lot of people thought that lots of players were going to move on, like Van Dijk, Sanchez, Lamar, but nobody's really gone anywhere, it seems. It's been a bit of a theatrical day. Paddy, is there any deals that have stood out for you today that you thought, wouldn't have minded Everton muscling in on that a little bit?
There's been a couple of midfielders that maybe Everton don't necessarily need, but I think they've been good additions. The first is Krychowiak, who I think went to West Brom yesterday. He's a very competent central midfielder, and I think he'll definitely shore them up with Gareth Barry. And then, of course, we've also had Renato Sanchez. I think that's a standout signing for me over the last few days. But what I would say there is, on a slightly different note, he's certainly not a Gylfi Sigurdsson replacement. He's not going to be your creative force that gets 10 goals and 10 assists. So they're two that I think are decent bits of business. On the whole, though, as you say, it's been rather quiet. This Thomas Lamar deal to either Arsenal or Liverpool doesn't
look like...
He
scored for France, Paddy, by the way, tonight.
He scored an absolute belter, didn't he? I'm just watching it now, actually. And he's obviously a really good talent. So I'm kind of glad he hasn't gone to Liverpool, to be honest with you. There's nothing else as far as I can see. To be honest, I've just now got my fingers crossed that we don't end up with Dini or Okaka on loan at the last minute.
What about you, Dave? Should we have muscled in for Mbappe maybe from PSG?
He's available on loan, so I am like,
that
is mind-boggling, by the way, that how they're allowed to do that sort of thing, taking a £180 million player on loan for a year. I mean, someone said before, it's borderline corruption, isn't it? Because you've got another side helping someone out in their league just to get around financial fair play. I mean, it's ridiculous. Mind you, you'd probably say that half the Premier League would do it under Sir Alex Ferguson, wouldn't he? In the years gone by, they'd all bend over for him.
Tell you what, Monaco won't cope in the Premier League. The net spend's going to be nearly minus 300 million, isn't it? Imagine all the fans kicking off. It'd be fuming.
Well, most of them would love it, wouldn't he? They love negative net spends.
Yeah,
they don't like value for money. You know, it's a real sin before God. Transfers today has not been anything that I've looked at and thought,
Llorente?
That's ridiculously good. Well, he's one that we probably got to gone for ourselves. And
he has signed for Tottenham, by the way, for anyone listening. It's officially gone through,
well, that was the talk that where it's turned into a bit of a chain reaction, is that if he'd have gone to Chelsea, we might have been freed up to sign Batshuayi then maybe. But obviously none of that's come to fruition. Some of these tweeters are now saying there's plenty of action at Finch Farm. I think they're just taking out the rubbish, to be honest with you.
Well,
sorry, what?
Sky apparently is saying that there's still action at Finch Farm, but whether or not that's just to get the young lad from Fulham through the door, I don't know.
Well, we'll wrap this off now then, in case we need to come back on later.
Can I finish what I was saying?
Sorry, I thought you'd finish your point.
No, not at all.
Apologies, David.
Thank you. You know me, I take ages to say what I really want to say, and then I don't end up saying it at all.
It's one of the issues when someone doesn't want to come into the studio and record face to face, isn't
it? And he's sitting there watching France as well, watching a bit of football while we're on the graft. That's a common theme, isn't it? With graphs and stuff like that. Just on the comments before I make my final point, Daddy Beak says, "Cheers, lads, and not a yellow tie in sight." Absolutely. We're glad so many of you have taken part and enjoyed it. By the way, it's a new thing for us, isn't it?
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. David Masson said this was better than Jolie Lescott on Sky. I think a lot of things are, mate. A kick in the bollocks might be better than Jolie Lescott on Sky. But my point on the window was,
go on,
and this is like Springer's final thought. This, for those of you old enough to remember that, you two won't. I think the signing of the window is probably a little bit left field here. Javier Hernandez, because I think he's a massive waste at West Ham. And I know there's that stat that he's never scored more than 10 goals in a season since Alex Ferguson retired.
I don't think that's true. He scored. You think he scored about 50?
I'm just making up things all over.
You are just.
But I look at him. I looked at him in that game against Southampton where they were 2-0 down to 10 men. Ball goes to him, it sticks. He's a small lad, but he can hold the ball up tremendously well. He's a poacher. I think that'd be perfect for what we're sort of set to do now with missing out on this target man. And I think he's a snip and he's wasted at West Ham because they're going to go down.
I'm not sure I agree, but I don't really want to
West
get
Ham
into
are going down.
Well, I'll agree with you on that one. I'm not sure about Hernandez, but...
Do you not like him?
I think he needs to be playing with another striker. I don't think he's really the right fit for the kind of setup that Koeman plays. He's not really playing two strikers.
Well, this is the thing we need to get out of our head now, mate. We've got Koeman plays. We don't know what that is. Yeah. It's year zero tomorrow, game 0 against Spurs.
But I think the best signing of the window for me is Matuidi to Juventus for 18 million. That's one of the bargains.
What about Premier League?
Sandro, hopefully. think he's a real talent, and I think he'll show it eventually in the money that we've paid for him. I think already now, if you wanted to sell him back to the Liga, just on reputation alone, next summer you'd be looking at 20-25 million for him.
And that's without him doing anything.
Yeah, I think he'll come good and be a really good player. And Paddy, just to finish off, your signing of the summer.
Stefano Akaka to Everton. No, I as I say, I like Krakowiak and I like Renato Sanchez. I think there's something very, very amusing and almost romantic about players going from top European clubs like Bayern Munich and PSG to those sides. So West Brom and Swansea have done well, respectively. There, definitely agree with Matt on the Matuidi one. I think it was at 18 million, more or less, for a player of his quality. That's another standout signing, and of course, Sandro's good business, but hopefully we'll be looking on, say, Wayne Rooney as being a major bargain. I know his wages here are probably going to be upwards of 150 grand a week. But as a free transfer and as a whole package, I think he's already added an awful lot to the Everton team. He was one of the few that showed up against Chelsea. He's got real footballing intelligence, and he's proven to be a leader on and off the pitch. So I think Rooney's a good bit of business actually now.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that as well. It's going to be
not hiring Charlie Adams, any sort of scout or agent for us, because he quite clearly has deep connections.
We'll get him on.
Olivier Giroud,
in January for the deadline day. We'll get him on.
Do you have a story? I was covering the golf at Birkdale, and Charlie Adam was there, not just standing around watching, but he was in the media tent, like trying to blag some free food.
Doesn't sound like him.
But he was decked out like he was playing in the Open. Do you know what I mean? He was like head to toe. And obviously, he's got to deal with Nike, head to toe in golf stuff.
I don't get people who do that when they go to golf, dress like they're about to play themselves. But suppose like going to the match, isn't it? People
it's like when I play snooker, I like to put my waistcoat on and all that.
Like that lad who puts his suit on, the Championship manager. But I think we'll wrap up.
Like Paddy putting red bills on for trips to Swansea.
I've just had a text off Mark Mose. He does the show, obviously saying, can't believe Giroud's bed has ruined our Champions League prospects. I think that's probably a good note to finish on there. But thanks very much to Dave and to Paddy for joining me. Well, if you like this, let us know, because it's something we've not done before, but it seems to have worked pretty well. Dave reliably informs. We've had loads of comments coming into it, so that's been fantastic, and it's something we'll look at doing more of in the future, I think.
Definitely is. I think doing live stuff's the way forward, as a lot of people seem to tell us. Not too happy with us putting out like 8 to 10 hours worth of content that's slightly behind. So we will endeavour to do some more live stuff. The other thing to say is this is also available as a podcast. So if you're only tuning in now or you've missed the first half of it or whatever, I'm going to put it out as a free podcast in a second. So it'll be available. Obviously, we'll tweet it out on all of our different accounts as well. And we've got bucket loads coming on the Blue Room Action the next couple of days, because we've held it back for ironically for all the action that Everton have been up to in the transfer window. So there's plenty coming your way tomorrow.
And Paddy, you're going to actually go and come in and do something, aren't you, tomorrow? You got your mailbag?
I've been in a lot recently, haven't I? Let's be honest.
But you've got the mailbag coming on tomorrow, so
just in between your trips to Copenhagen and other exotic European cities.
Yeah, I've got a few more lined up, lads, to be honest.
Oh, God, I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing about that.
Good job at this work so well then, Paddy, doesn't it? Because you can do this on location now. There's no excuse anymore.
I'll take my laptop and do the mailbag from Copenhagen next time.
It's going to be exciting, that. But yeah, Paddy's mailbag's back tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow. Get over to the blueroomefc.com if you want to get involved in the subscription stuff. Really good value for money. $3.99 a month. Thanks very much for tuning in. Thanks very much for all your comments. And let's hope everything pull the finger out and do some business late in this transfer window.